Yes, the Hork-Bajir are in fact an artificial species, as is all non-Arn life on this planet. The Hork-Bajir were created to tend to the trees, and the monsters in the mist were created to keep the Hork-Bajir away from the Arn. This goes a long way in explaining why there are no predators on this planet, why Hork-Bajir can fall asleep so quickly, why there are no violent conflicts over territory or property or what have you, as they skip these steps in evolution. The Arn made them just smart enough to care for the trees and let them loose. Of course, that doesn't account for the seers.
"You're a freak is what you are," Quantz said. "A dangerous, unstable element. It was our one great failure. 1 in 10,000 Hork-Bajir is born with intelligence that rivals that of the Arn."
Ah, a bit of error in the code that you just couldn't fix, resulting in an outstanding individual. So we've got Avatar and now the Matrix movies. Is the Hork-Bajir Chronicles secretly the most derived work of the 20th century? The Arn say that they have no interest in the war with the Yeerks. Dak Hammy points out that if the Hork-Bajir fall, the trees will die, which means the Arn will die. The Arn say they don't have any weapons. Dak Hammy points out that they created an army of butt-puckering monsters. Finally, the Arn agree to give Dak and Aldrea control of the monsters to lead an assault against the Yeerks. Above the mist, the Yeerks have been busy hollowing out a tree to make a Yeerk pool. At this point, they're all pretty confident that they'll conquer the planet of these stupid lizards, and are so relaxed with themselves that this is one brewski short of a fishing trip. Esplin, and a new Hork-Bajir host, is hanging out by the new pool, minding his own business, when all of a sudden Tim Burton's Army of Darkness rises from the mist and starts attacking. We get a brief description of many of the Arn's twisted nightmares, and interestingly, some of these kind of resemble some of the things Visser 3 would morph throughout the series, especially a pants-wetting tentacle monster that strongly resembles the pants-wetting tentacle monster from number 11, The Forgotten. Nothing confirmed, mind you, just a neat little theory. It took another 2 days to assemble the creatures from all around the valley. In the end, we had more than 100. They were a circus of twisted DNA. The Arn had not missed a trick. How do you know what a circus is? Dak Hammy leads the monsters into battle, while Aldrea slips away to try to get to one of the landed ships, where she can send a message to Andalite Central. The monsters are powerful and deadly, but also really huge and ungainly, and pretty easy to pick off with laser weapons, so Dak Hammy looks for reinforcements, and finds it in the place he was so hoping he wouldn't.
"We marched up the valley. We marched beneath the trees. In the branches overhead, more and more Hork-Bajir were following us. Hundreds now, all watching, waiting. They were chanting as they swung from branch to branch. They were chanting, 'Do as he does, do as he does.' Aldrea had done her job well. She had created a simple instruction for my fellow Hork-Bajir. She was very clever. The Andalites are a very clever species. Like the Yeerks, like the Arn. We were created by one brilliant species, invaded and enslaved by another, and now a third was using us. But as I marched, I saw no way out. That was what made me feel as sick as someone who had eaten yellow bark. There was no other way for us. We had become tools to be used by smarter, more powerful species. Do as he does. Do as he does."
The Hork-Bajir eventually join in the fray, the distraction sufficient enough for Aldrea to get to one of the stolen ships and boot up Skype, but Esplin catches her and knocks her down. "Go ahead. You want to kill me. Go ahead," I cried with a lot more courage than I really felt. I was sick with fear, and just plain sick from the spinning in my head. "Kill you? No, not me," he said. "I don't want to kill you. I want to make you my host. I will be the first Andalite controller ever. I will have complete access to your every secret, to all the scientific and technical knowledge you possess. See, I've studied you Andalites. I admire you. Esplin, are you monologuing? Visitor 3 is starting to break through. Esplin takes control of the ship with intents to blow up all the monsters and rebelling Hork-Bajir from the sky, but unfortunately he's unaware of that new Andalite morphing technology and gets caught off guard when the Andalite he captured is suddenly a Jubba Jubba. Esplin gets choked out and then thrown out, and Aldrea continues with communications, sending a simple message. "The Yerks are here, why isn't your ass?" However, it takes 7 long months before the Andalites arrive. During that time, Aldrea and Dak Hammy have been leading a guerrilla war against the Yerks, and even managed to destroy the first Yerk pool. But their forces of monsters in Hork-Bajir, who took to the idea of violence far too quickly for comfort, get whittled down pretty quickly. All the while, the Yerks have been expanding at an almost unnatural pace. The shredders we captured were being altered. The Yerks called this new weapon a Dracon beam. It did not kill as cleanly as a shredder. It caused more pain. And even more ominous, huge excavations were occurring. The Yerks were mining iron, uranium, nickel, bauxite, diamonds, and rubies. They were building stronger bases. And from the far side of the planet, we heard stories of vast constructions. I had very little doubt what the Yerks were building, and eventually we had proof. They were building more spacecraft. Craft that would be manned by Hork-Bajir controllers and armed with the new Dracon beam weapons. The Yerks had learned very fast. They had Andalite, Skritna, Ungachik, and Hajabaran technology to dissect. And now they were no longer held back by a lack of hosts. Screw almost. This kind of production is outright impossible. Okay, let's break this down. This small group of Yerks, who had only just learned things like written languages and tool use, have been floating around space for 2 whole years, only grabbing a handful of ships from other races. And in 7 months, they turned these limited amount of resources into a major production that'll grow to challenge the Andalites. Let's just stick with mining. I can buy that maybe there were files on mining in the Andalite databanks, but I seriously doubt that there were enough resources between these 8 to 10 ships, 4 of which were fighters, to mine different kinds of metal, refine them, and use them in constructing brand new weapons, bases, and spacefaring ships. All in 7 months, all on an alien planet, while a guerrilla war is going on. But even if the physical logistics of it made sense, consider this. Esplin's interest in becoming an expert in something is portrayed as fairly unique among his fellow Yerks, and that kind of makes sense in the context of the Yerks as a species. They're blind, they bump around in crowded pools, and only occasionally does one get to ride around the head of a Geed. There was never a lot of things for Yerks to specialize in, so the drive to develop personal talents probably never evolved. Therefore, even though the knowledge was there were probably no experts in mining, science, or construction, all the good stuff when they reached the Hork-Bajir homeworld. Of course, they probably recognized the need for experts once they landed, but tell me, if you were taken to a random country you weren't familiar with and were given 3 books on mining, a tank, an empty freight truck, and a broken-down Volkswagen Beetle, and had some immigrant workers who didn't speak your language, how long do you think it would take you to mine a pound of anything, and then refine it, and then use that metal to build another tank, and a computer? Because that's pretty much the difficulty curve the Yerks have here. I don't know. Maybe if there was another intelligent species on this planet that had equipment that could carve elaborate cities into cliff faces and had construction equipment that allowed them to create computing and bioengineering technology. Hey, Todd, we ever gonna chase those rebel Hork-Bajir beyond the blue mist? No? Okay. Yeah, the Yerks haven't even gotten to the Arn yet. Not that the Arn aren't prepared, as they've gone and altered their bodies, so that their brains will literally explode if a Yerk enters. Finally, the Andalites show up, led by Lauren. But, they didn't exactly think this through. We have 8 fighters, 2 transports, 1 resupply ship, 1 repair ship, a total of less than 1,000 warriors. We destroyed 2 Yerk fighters on our way in. So you guys wanted a fair fight, or Days after we heard your message from here, we received intergalactic reports that the Yeerk fleet was in Sector 2. The main fleet is there. We assume that because you...
He didn't finish.
I'm just a female, and the daughter of Prince Zero, so you assumed I was a fool.
Eldrea said flatly.
It'll take a year for the main fleet to get here, unless Z-Space reconfigures,
one of the officers said.
What the hell made you think the Yeerks were in Sector 2? Every single one of them is right here. What kind of intelligence network do you have that can come to the conclusion that Yeerks are in Sector 2 when there cannot possibly be a trace of Yeerks in Sector 2? And even if someone made a prank call and convinced the Andalite military that there were Yeerks there, why would they send the entire fleet there and such a small party here? This is normally not advisable in a war, but the Andalites aren't at war with anyone else, and the Yeerk forces are so small, so itty-bitty, that you could get away with sending half the fleet to the Hork-Bajir homeworld and half the fleet to Sector 2. Hell, a tenth of the fleet would be overkill against the Yeerks at this point. Dome ship weapons can blow holes in moons. There should be no reason not to fry these guys from orbit. You know what this feels like? Like Kay Applegate wrote herself into a corner, that she made the Yeerk forces too weak at the beginning, and unable to change it, she then had to come up with excuses on how the Yeerks might gain enough power to be a real threat later on. This has the unfortunate effect of making the Andalites look like total tossers, from their shitty security to how they manage their forces. The only way to raise the Yeerks up is to push the Andalites down, and when that's the only option, it's probably best to trash what you've written so far and start again from square one.